What's up guys, it's another month, it's time for another subscription box. This one is genuinely a really fun one. Let's go ahead and open it up, see what's inside. All right, let's see what we got. So, starting off with our ring blank. This is titanium, very light, very strong. These make for some fantastic rings. Next, glow powder. This is an aqua glow. What I like about aqua is it's got a really solid glow brightness. But it's really kind of a pure white color in the day. The green gets a little bit too kind of a greeny color to it, which I don't always like. So this will give it a really nice pure look. And then the ingredients that we'll add to it. The first one is going to be diamonds. We'll go over some of the techniques that we do for that. I want to crush these up, make them smaller. That makes them a little bit easier to work with, and I think just adds kind of a cool effect to the ring. And then next up, opal. This is a really nice ingredient to add to any ring. It just adds a flare of color wherever you use it. This is white, which is a lot more subtle than some of the other ones, but that's good. That's what we want for this ring. Just gonna give it a really cool flare. And you can see opal, it has a kind of some blues and greens, as well as a red and orange color that it gives off. And finally, we've got some copper shavings here. And what these will do, and what any metal will do, is it adds a lot of contrast to your ring because they're opaque. And copper specifically because it has such a defined copper color that it has. Whereas like meteorite, if we were to put this in with a titanium ring, it's not really going to stand out from there. So the copper, it's going to really stand out, give it kind of a punch of color, make the ring just look that much better. What we're going to do different about this ring is I want to mix all of these up into one container. That'll make the inlaying process a lot more straightforward and simple, and it'll give the ring more of a kind of homogeneous look. The whole ring all the way around will be a little bit similar. So it's a different style. If you've seen my Stardust ring, that's what it's going to somewhat emulate. So we'll see at the end what the difference is between this and a normal glowstone ring design would be. Typically you've got the big chunks in there that really kind of stand out. This is just going to have one kind of solid look all the way around, and it makes for a really refined look in a lot of cases. So I'm excited to get into this, but first things first, always got to mention the safety material. I always use a face shield. This just protects me from any bits flying out at my face. Rather than just goggles, this will protect your whole face, so that's nice. And then a mask, I always use this whenever I'm grinding away at anything. So anytime you're sanding, anything like that, always use one of these. And then, of course, just our adhesives using some cyanoacrylate with some accelerator. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so first step, we're going to mount our ring mandrel in the lathe, and then after that, we're going to mount the ring onto that. And if this is your, if you're new to ring making, if this is one of your first times using one, I'll just briefly go over some of the steps I'm doing. Because this ring, it's on the second to last step here, so it's pretty close to the jaws of the lathe. So you'll notice I put it out a little bit, and I'll even go a little bit further. And I just do that because I'm just worried about safety. I don't want to have my hands anywhere near the spinning chuck here. So now I will put it on that second to last step. And then what I do is I just slowly tighten it until it starts to grab the ring. And then just try to wiggle it, make sure it's on there straight, and then just do a test run. That is perfect. Okay, if it's a little bit off the side, I'd recommend just cranking it back just a little bit, trying to take your time and make sure it's set up right because it'll leave you with a better quality ring. And then final tip for you, this is titanium, so you don't need to worry about it chipping or breaking like you would with ceramic. Almost indestructible, but you don't want to ever crank it down too tight. It's not good for your equipment, and it's not good for the ring. It might leave an impression on the inside of it. So just do it tight enough so that you can't move the blank. And I try like as hard as I can with my hands, and I can't get it to move. That should be right. Any tighter than that is just kind of overkill in my opinion. So the blank's on here perfectly. We're ready to begin the inlaying process, but first I want to take some of the materials and I want to crush up the opal and the diamond a little bit, mix things up. So I'm just going to give these a little bit of attention. Then we'll come back over here and start inlaying them. So what I wanted to do for this ring, like I said earlier, is do all of the materials all at once in one vial. So I need to prep them and get them ready to be inlaid because we're not going to have any control over what happens to them after this. So to start things off, I'm going to pour out some glow powder. This is just a vial I had lying around that I'm pouring it into. And I think I'm going to go for about halfway full here. That should give us all we need for just this one ring. Should give us a bit extra. That's more than I need. I'll dump the excess back out. So is that? 1.5 milliliters? Something like? Yeah, I'd say so. So, got that good to go. Glow powder didn't need to do anything with. That was super quick and easy. Now, the copper shavings, also don't need to really do anything with these. I am going to dump them out here and kind of pick the shavings I want. And then just kind of put them in one at a time. I'll grab some tweezers. So this right here, this is a big shaving. It's nice, but it's not going to inlay well with this technique that we're using. If you want to take it by hand and inlay it by hand, you can do that. You don't have to do everything I do in the video. I'm just going to take the loose, kind of smaller chunks, put them all in here. This is taking long. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick out the bad chunks, and then I'll just dump in the good chunks all at once. And I'll save these for later when I'm doing another ring that I want to have a different look too. Come here. There we go. Okay. And maybe, you know what? I'm just going to kind of smush these up just a little bit too. Just because I want this to really have a lot of evenness to the inlay. You'll see why that makes a difference later, or if you do some experimenting at home, you can figure out for yourself. Okay, smash those up. This should help them blend with the rest of the material better and not just kind of get stuck at the top. Okay, now I'm going to mix this up, see how that's looking. That's good. I'll add just a little bit more. We're pretty much there. I think flattening them really did help. That I would recommend doing. Just put the excess back in here, save that for later. Okay, that is looking great. That should inlay nicely. What you don't want is you don't want all of the material kind of floating up to the top, bunching up, because it's just going to appear in kind of one spot of the ring. Okay, got that ready. Now let's worry about the opal. The opal, it already looks kind of good. It's already pretty small, but I just wanted to crush it up just a bit more. So I think that will be better. So I'll just pour a little bit out onto my, it's just a hardened steel 1-2-3 block. Pour it out there, and then I'll just lightly tap on this with the hammer. Doesn't take much force. Just breaking them up. It's nice to have the big chunks in there, so I'll leave some big ones. But what we're getting that's important is just like that really small dust. That helps just kind of sell the effect that this ring will have. I'll just do it in small little batches. Okay, that's looking good. I'm going to add that to the mix, and then I'll decide if I want to do more. Okay, it's really hard to say until they get inlaid. They don't really show up well. But for safety, I think this ring, the more opal it has, the better. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of this. And what I've got here, if I'm careful, this should be enough for 2 rings, I believe. Depending on the size, I guess. So, even though we're using this all, we'll still have a good bit left over. And you can do a second ring in the future. Being careful here, trying to contain it all. Don't want to lose any of it. So, diamonds. If you have a hardened steel block like I do here, diamonds are so hard that they'll still kind of embed themselves into it. So if you care about your block, I would not recommend doing it on your nice block. I've got an older one here that I'm doing it on. Okay, so just got a nice little pile. That's probably about 1/3 of them. I'm just going to slowly kind of pulverize these as best I can. All right, that worked really well. You just kind of got to be patient, take it slowly, just give them some short, direct little hits. I don't know if it's showing on camera, but what I love about this is it adds just a really cool sparkle, kind of a glittery effect, but I don't want glitter. Glitter's cheesy, so that's really nice. These are real rough diamonds. Okay, there we go. That honestly might be enough. I'll probably do one more batch about that same size. So I'd rather overdo it with these than underdo it. Okay, yep, poured those in. Cap that off so I don't spill it everywhere. Now I'll do just one more batch of those. There we go. I've still got about half of them that I can use later. All right, there we go. We've got our mix all ready to go. This should make for an awesome looking ring. I'm gonna go ahead and transfer this into a glass vial just because it's clear, to give you a better look at what's inside. Then we'll go ahead and start inlaying the ring. All right, here it is. I'm just putting a bead of glue around the whole entire circumference of it. And then I'll just gently sprinkle our material down into the channel. Ooh, I can already see a lot of opal chunks going in. That's good. Good sign. Okay, there's the first layer. I just like to go until you kind of got all of the super glue soaked up. Now I'm just dabbing a little bit of this super thin. You'll see how it just soaks into the inlay just so much more effectively. I like to do about 2 layers with just the medium viscosity. And then I do a little bit of that thin just to help make sure everything's adhering, got glue soaked into it. This is going really well. I'm not even going to use half of this inlay, I don't think. This should be enough for 3 rings, I'd say. Who knows? It's kind of really hard to gauge how much you're using and when it'll run out, but at least right now, it's lasting pretty well. So you'll notice some of my pieces just started falling out. There's not enough glue there to stick everything down, so gotta add more so that I can keep stuff in place. What I just did, here's a technique. Once you get kind of towards the top, if you don't have, like I don't have as much copper as I want showing. So earlier I tried to mix this up and make sure all of the materials and ingredients were mixed evenly throughout. Now I want some extra copper, so I'm gonna lightly shake it just like this. That'll vibrate the copper up to the top. Now we should get a lot more copper and just all the other inlay materials. There we go. Yep, that's working really well. So if you don't want to waste all of the opals and copper and stuff on the bottom of the ring where they're not going to show at all, just mix it up really thoroughly. Then at the end, that's when you can get all the cool stuff to show up. There we go, looking great. To me, it looks like it needs some thin. Got a lot of dry patches. It's hard to get, it's easy to get glow powder to go into glue. It's hard to get glue to go into glow powder, and that's specifically for medium viscosity. Thin doesn't care, it'll go into anything no matter what way you put it. This is a big chunk, that looks bad. I don't want to have that all together at least. I'll pull a piece of it off with my tweezers and put just a small piece back in. That just looks a little bit too chunky to me. This is looking great so far. I'm actually, I I did honestly have high hopes for this design, but I think we're going to beat them, if anything. So far so good. This is great. All right, we're getting really close to being done. I'm just going in and cherry picking, finding all of the tiny little spots that are below the surface of the titanium edges. Don't want any voids left in the ring. And I kind of spoke too soon with how much material I was using. I'd say I've only got about half left. So the amount you saw me make, this is a size 10.5 ring. So it's about good for 2 10.5 sized rings, give or take. You could be a little bit more frugal with your powder than I'm being. If you want to go fast, you just put in an excess amount of inlay material. But if you want to conserve material, you can just put in kind of a minimal amount, sand it down, and then just only put extra where you really need it. Okay, this is looking great. And then the next step, instead of just starting to sand, because all of the pieces in this are so small, I'm not afraid of large chunks ripping out if I machine it down with my lathe. So I'm going to use my lathe. I've got the bit right here. So I'm going to use this bit to shave it down. If you don't have one, don't worry, just you can sand it down just like any other ring that we've done in the past. But for those of you with the lathe at home, just want to make sure that you're getting full use out of your tools. Okay, there we go. I'm just doing a very, very small layer of thin glue all the way around, just kind of dabbing it, making sure all of the glow powder has plenty of glue in it. That way we don't have chunks fly out while we're sanding it, and that'll leave us with voids. All right, I've got a really good tip for you guys. I've noticed in our Facebook group that we have where we talk about the subscription box. And by the way, if you're not in that Facebook group, you probably should be. It's fantastic. Anyways, I'm noticing a lot of people are having questions about voids and pockets appearing in their ring. My biggest piece of advice is to make sure you have thin glue. If you just have the medium, I'd say pick up some thin. That's going to be really helpful for you. And then just do really thin layers. So in this ring, I probably did about 15 layers total that I did in this. You could, in theory, do it all kind of in like 2 or 3 if you're just kind of dumping in a ton of glue and a ton of glow powder, but that's not good. That's gonna leave you with a lot of issues. So just go really nice and slow and steady, and then at the end when you're using the accelerator to harden it, just make sure it has plenty of time to harden. So give it plenty of accelerator and then just maybe leave it for 10, 15 minutes, maybe an hour. You know, just if you're having any of those problems, just start working away with one variable at a time until you figure out how to fix it. All right, now we've got everything in place. I was really careful with how I inlaid everything. I was really deliberate with all the steps. So we should be left with a really straightforward process from here on out. It's really important to do those first steps well because it's going to make the next steps so much easier. So now I'll just put a light little spray all around the ring with the accelerator. And you'll notice I didn't use any accelerator throughout the process to begin with. I usually only use it if I need something to stay in place. And because of the way this ring is with all those small pieces, that wasn't really an issue at all. And because it's starting to get colder outside, my shop's a bit colder, the accelerator doesn't like to dry as fast. And so if I was doing that, I would recommend to you to get a heat gun and just make sure that the accelerator has time to dry. That way your super glue doesn't end up hardening as soon as you put it on there, and that'll leave you with clear spots, which is a really bad situation to be left in. All right, it's been about 5 minutes. I've let this fully harden. I'm gonna go ahead and start trimming it down. Like I said earlier, I'm gonna use the lathe for this just to show you guys out there with this equipment how to use it if you want. So now I'm just going to set it up and I'm going to do very light passes. Also, I'll mention I've got a brand new tungsten carbide bit in there, so everything's super sharp. I've got it, the tool height set correctly. I'm going to take really shallow passes. I do not want to chip out this inlay all at once. You can do that, have the whole thing rip out on you. So you just want to go nice and gentle on it. All right, so I went ahead and trimmed down the outer diameter of it a good bit. I ruined both ends of the carbide. You saw me switch it around. The Opal is surprisingly hard. That's what was in there that was really kind of ruining this. So I didn't want to go too far, so I stopped pretty early. But what's nice is I've got the surface really nice and even, which makes sanding go a lot easier. If you've got big bumps, it kind of like throws your hand off the lathe as you're doing it, and it makes it a lot harder to get those smooth, consistent results. So we removed probably half of the material, and we got it all nice and smooth. So we saved ourselves a good amount of time. Just didn't quite take it as far as I usually like to. So now I've got a really rough Dremel bit on my Dremel here. I'm just gonna turn the lathe on nice and slow and just slowly start to sand away the surface here. I'll throw on my dust mask so I won't do any talking from here on out until I get it down sanded flush. But I'll leave you with a couple of tips. So just make sure that you're replacing your sandpaper as often as you need to. I've got 4 right here. I might need to use more later. And if you're having overheating problems, I like to use water and just spray a little bit of it on there, and that just keeps things cool. You don't want to melt the adhesive in here. If you get this way too hot, you'll have that start melting and it'll start gumming up your inlay, giving you gross colors, kind of like how you can see this black. We're gonna get rid of all of that. We're gonna leave it with a nice kind of pure white color at the end. Want to make sure it's nice and clean. So all the sandpaper, we're gonna keep it super clean. We're gonna keep it super fresh, replace it when it needs to. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. Let's go ahead and do it. All right, guys, I need to backtrack a little bit. You heard me talking earlier about the Opal being harsh on the carbide. I don't know what I was talking about. I know Opal isn't that hard, but that was the only thing I remember that was in there that is a little bit hard. It's the diamond. I literally just completely spaced that we had the diamond in here. So the Opal, it would never do this to the tungsten carbide. I was really scratching my head there. I was trying to play it cool on camera, but I did not know what was going on. It's the diamond in there just completely kind of destroyed the carbide, so that's why that didn't last very long. It was still helpful. I'd still do it again if I was starting over. And then check out how many Dremel bits I went through. Here's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 on here. This is about used up too. So I had to use so much to get down it, and that's just how diamond goes. It's worth it, I'd say. If you want to use less diamond in yours, it'll be a lot less of a pain to sand down. But as long as you're careful, you don't overheat anything, you replace your sandpaper often, and use water while you're doing so, you're going to end up having perfectly fine results. Right now you can see it's really dark and gross looking. I'm gonna clean that up soon with some sandpaper and some water. You just gotta do a good job of, again, just switching through it. So we'll get rid of that. It should be perfectly nice looking. If you are struggling really hard, you can get on Amazon and order what's called a diamond file. It's just a file, but it's got diamonds all over it. That'll really help combat those diamonds, help you sand through those just a little bit more effectively. So there's a little tip for you. Now, let's go ahead and start the sanding of it. If you'll notice, as I was doing the sanding, I was being very careful to just only sand this way. I don't want to ruin those bevels. This isn't tungsten. I can ruin those bevels if I sand them away. So, right now, I've got a lot of material left on those edges there. So that's something we have to deal with. I'm just gonna grab a razor blade out of my drawer. You guys have seen me do this before. And I'll just match it on the bevel. I'm gonna do it on my side here so it's easier for me. But so you guys can get the idea. I'll just match it to the bevel angle and then just try to scrape off any of that I can. It just takes a minute. This time, because I've got the diamonds in here, I've doubled up on the 150 grit and the 220 grit. That'll just give me some extra sandpaper material. That'll help me make sure I get a really thorough sanding job done on these first 2 grits. After that, I just left it at 1. That should be totally fine. All right, we're ready to polish. I've got my Patrick Adair Supplies polish here ready to go. Should give us some excellent results, plus a tissue I've just got folded up. Just gonna dab a little bit here. You really don't need much. Wipe a bit on the ring. Get one small little dab extra. There we go. I'll turn the lathe on slowly to spread it. And then I'll speed it up and I'll just thoroughly just go over the whole thing. Should shine it right up. Ooh, there we go. This thing's finished. This looks great. Let's check this out. All right, here's the grand reveal, guys. Boom. Look at that. Love it. You can see that opal, the way it worked. It's just such a cool flash of just color everywhere. And then the copper, that's showing up well. We just started out with those shavings. Showed up really nicely. We've got that contrast like I was talking about. Love that. While we've got on macro, let's just go over the whole thing and see if we can't learn anything. Right there, there's a teeny little void right there where the copper is reflecting. I can go patch that. That'd be a quick fix. It's not hard. You just dig it out a little bit, fill it in with some glow powder, repeat the same steps, sand it down, polish everything up. Over here, this all looks great. One thing to pay attention to is like the distribution of materials. I think this is perfect. This is exactly what I wanted. Lots of copper. If you want more opal, you can add more opal. If you want less, you can add less. If you want to omit something, you can leave out the copper. If you don't like that, the world's your oyster, okay? Yeah, I'm having a hard time coming up with much. You know, like, it's a pretty straightforward ring. Being able to crush them up so small really helps avoid a lot of issues. A lot of the bigger pieces can cause problems, which I like the results they give, but there's just a lot more to learn with those. Inside's looking good still. I didn't do anything to that. That's just still nice and polished. The outside, polish did a great job, nice and shiny. So yeah, that's the ring. I could keep rambling, but you guys get it. So that's the video, guys. This was a really fun month to be a part of, so consider yourself lucky if you got one of these. This is a really solid design. I'm gonna keep this and wear this. It's a great one. But yeah, if you're not in the Facebook group already, I definitely recommend doing so. It's just a whole different level of help. There's just so many people in there who are so passionate about what they do. Everyone who's going through the exact same issues as you, doing all the same kind of experimentations. It's just such a awesome, just kind of think tank of like-minded people. So join that if you haven't. Other than that, that's all I've got for you this month. If you guys like this box, if you like this video, give us feedback because we seriously love it. Anyways, that's it. Thanks for watching. See you next month.